Hello friends and welcome back to the Dork Side. I'm the Dork on the Road and this is 5 things you need to know before you buy a Norden 901 of your own. I'm the Dork on the Road and I want to be your internet riding buddy, so please consider subscribing. So I've owned my Norden 901 since they first came out. I've put over 3,000 miles on it and I've had it for, 6 or 7 months now. So I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what it's like to own and ride one, and so it's really easy to find videos that kind of give you all the stats and the specs and all that. And there's a lot of videos from people who did 1 or 2 days on it and their opinions and their overall review. But there's not a lot of content out there about what it's like to actually own and ride one. So that's kind of the point of this video, is to tell you 5 things that you should know before you buy yourself a Norden 901. First thing you need to know about the Norden 901 is the answer to the first question, the first comment that you'll get if you tell somebody you're looking to buy one, and that is it reliable? Now, admittedly, I can't speak to the long-term reliability because I don't have more than 3,000 miles on it, but I can tell you that it has been reliable so far for me. I had one minor issue, that was the hose clamps. That's a super common issue on the radiator. They're just not tightened enough, so I had a little bit of fluid leaking. I tightened them up, no problem since then. And then just other minor issues like the favorite settings, resetting, just some software issues that'll probably be fixed on the next version. I don't know, I keep waiting for a firmware update. There's a lot of information out there about these bikes being unreliable. There was a lot of talk about that rear shock issue. Some of the rear shocks on some of the Nordens have failed. I obviously haven't had that issue, and I belong to a couple Norden groups, and they did a survey in the group I was in. And let me just tell you some of the results in terms of, it's not a scientific survey, but there's a couple hundred people who participated. 8% reported undefined rear suspension issues. Yes, that is a big percentage, but the idea that you're gonna get one and it's definitely gonna fail, it's 92% probably not gonna fail. 15% reported the coolant leak like I had. 6% reported cold start issues. I've also had that one. Something about it, when you first start it doesn't want to idle. I've read that it has something to do with one cylinder not wanting to work, or I don't know what it is, but it goes away when you start the bike up and let it run for a little bit. So it's not the only bike I have that has that issue, so that was never something that really super concerned me, but it is an issue to be aware of. 9% of the people in the group said that whatever their issue was, it required a dealer repair, and 83% reported no issues or tiny problems that did not require a dealer or parts or anything like that. So is it the most reliable motorcycle on earth based on the information? No. Is it guaranteed that it's going to fail on you? Also no. That's pretty typical, I think, for non-Japanese bikes. I don't have a lot of experience, but that's one of the reasons why I bought this one, was to get some experience. But just know there's a lot of talk out there about reliability issues, and while there are some issues, and they are more common than they probably should be, this idea that you're going to get one and it's going to fail on you and leave you stranded is probably overblown, at least in my experience so far. So I don't know if it's reliable, but I will say mine has been reliable so far, which is encouraging. The second thing to know before you buy a Norden 901 is that it is ridiculously fun, but also a little bit scary. It's the most fun I've ever had on a motorcycle, street, off-road, whatever. I don't know, I've owned 10 or 12 bikes at this point, but it is so fast on the street. Easily the fastest bike I've ever owned on the street. You can pass people with ease. It carves up twisties unbelievably well, even though it's an adventure bike, and even though I have basically 90-10 tires on there with I've got a Tusk D-Sport on the front, which is totally a knobby, and then on the rear I've got the Tractionator Rouse. So even with those tires, I'm still getting into the traction control, sliding around corners and the twisties. It is just so fun to ride fast. It's really capable off-road. It does a lot of work for you. It helps you out in a lot of interesting ways. Such a blast to twist the throttle on this bike, at least in my experience, can handle anything you throw at it. Even things you weren't expecting to be throwing at it. Perfect example is out on the Washington BDR. You guys have heard me say this a few times, but there were 2 sections, both on day 4, crazily enough, that I was not expecting the difficulty that appeared around the corner, and I had no choice but to just keep going. And the Norden, at the time, surprisingly, carried me right through it. Now that I've ridden it a lot and trust it more, I understand that that's just what it does, but there were definitely things that I wasn't sure it was going to be capable of, and I just twisted the throttle and held on, and the bike did the work. The ride modes are incredibly intuitive. It's just really, really good software design by these KTM engineers. It's intuitive. Like, the bike knows when I'm trying to break the rear loose versus when I need more traction. The bike knows when I'm trying to goose it a little bit to go over a jump versus when the tire's sliding out because I'm doing dumb things. It's got lean sensitive ABS, it's got lean sensitive traction control, so it knows when you lean into the corner, as you apply throttle, as you straighten up the bike, it'll apply more throttle as you gain more traction. It's just incredibly intuitive. intuitive. It will make you a much better rider. It is so easy to ride because of all that stuff. So the second thing to know is it's just insanely fun, and you don't have to think about it as hard as I thought I would have to with a bike with this much horsepower and capability. Number 3 thing to know before you buy a Norden 901 is forget what you've heard about frequent maintenance. The first thing people say when I'm like, oh, I'm buying a KTM or I buy a Husqvarna is, oh man, that thing's gonna break down on you. The second thing is, I hope you like doing that maintenance. I don't know how many comments I've gotten that said, oh, you must really like doing maintenance if you bought one of those bikes. Oil change intervals on the Norden 901 are 9,300 miles. I would not run it to 9,300 miles, but if you're changing your oil once a year for most people, it's gonna be under that. And if it isn't, well, you should be changing it more often than that, but my guess is if you're riding that much, you already know that. 9,300 mile oil changes, that's more than I think pretty much any motorcycle I've ever owned. So that's pretty good for a bike like this, a bike this high performance, a bike with the compression that it has. The first valve check is at 18,000 miles. That's a little lower than some of the Japanese bikes, but it's still, we're not talking 1,000, we're not talking, in the first year. 18,000 miles is more than most people will ride this bike the whole time they have it, or many people, right? They say 10,000 miles a year on an adventure bike is a lot. So that's at least 2 years from new before you have to have a valve check or thereabouts if you're an above average rider. Most of the people that I know that own adventure bikes, they don't put 10,000 miles a year on them. Some of you do, kudos to you, but the average rider definitely rides less than that. So forget what you've heard about frequent maintenance. It's just not necessary. This is a bike that to a degree you can just ride as much as you want and just do your yearly maintenance or whatever, like I do with most of my motorcycles. So that was a big surprise to me. Number 4 is that this bike has a wide range of capabilities. So the Norden 901 is based on the KTM 890 Adventure. You know that. The difference between the KTM 890 Adventure R and the Norden 901 is that the Norden has some concessions to make it more comfortable on the road. Much wider seat, much more comfortable seat. The suspension is not quite as stiff, so it makes it slightly less capable, but it's so much more comfortable on the road. On the road, it's a very comfortable bike. This is a travel motorcycle. It's not designed necessarily with the philosophy of the most hardcore off-road adventure bike. That is the KTM 890R. This is designed with the philosophy of the best travel adventure bike no matter what you encounter, and that includes miles and miles and miles on the tarmac. It's very comfortable at long distances. The bike cruises comfortably. It's not vibey. The seating position is very comfortable. I like where the bars are. The only thing that sucks for long distances on the road is the windscreen. It's just not tall enough, but there are aftermarket ones coming out. So that's the only gripe I have with it. And even then with earplugs in, it's like, whatever, it's no worse than any other bike I've ever had. It's incredibly nimble. You look at this bike, it's super wide. It looks like an aircraft carrier. It looks like you're riding a hippopotamus. But when you get on it, all that disappears. It melts away. It's a very nimble feeling bike. All the weight is down low. It's easy to handle. Pretty capable off-road. The suspension is soft. I have bottomed it a few times, but it's still very capable, soaks up a lot of bumps, takes a licking and keeps on ticking. It can handle technical stuff. It can handle slow speed technical. It can handle hill climbs. It can handle steep downhills. You can guide it in and out of the ruts. I've had it in the sand. I've had it in the mud, and it's never failed me, never let me down, never made me think, holy crap, this bike can't do what I'm throwing at it. It honestly exceeds every expectation I have of it as a rider and every ability I have as a rider. It's a better bike than I am a rider for sure. Now, having said all that, it's not an 890 Adventure R. So again, if you're looking for the most capable off-road adventure bike in the world, the 890R is pretty close to that in the rally if you can find it, but you're gonna have to pay like $25,000 for that. So if you're looking for the most capable adventure bike, you don't want to buy a Norden and upgrade the suspension. It costs too much. Unless you just really love the looks and don't give a crap about money. If you want the most capable bike, get that 890R, more capable and less comfortable. But the Norden makes a really good middle ground. It's more than capable for what your average or above average ADV rider will throw at it, but it is not the most capable adventure bike of all time. And that is the 4th thing you should know about the Norden 901 before you buy one. And the 5th and final thing that you should know about the Norden 901 before you buy one is maybe a personal thing, but based on the comments on my review video, I'm not the only one that feels this way. It will make you ride like an asshole. So be prepared for the fact that you may find yourself wanting to ride more aggressively on and off-road than you do now. On the road with that traction control, that lean-sensitive ABS, that unbelievable amount of acceleration and power, I just hate being stuck behind people no matter what the conditions. So I find myself passing 4 cars at once or exceeding the speed limit by quite a bit. It feels dumb to go slow. The bike is so smooth, you're just cruising at what feels like a reasonable speed and you look down and holy crap, I'm going 90 miles an hour. And it just just handles it, just cruises. It's so good on the road. You're just shocked that an adventure bike could possibly be this comfortable and cruise this well and be this capable and corner this well and be this fun to ride in the twisties on the pavement. But that also applies off-road because it's got like a safety net. If you keep it in off-road mode, which is fantastic, incredibly intuitive, I did the whole Washington BDR in off-road mode and never once felt like I needed to get out of it, never once felt like it was intervening too much. In fact, quite the contrary, it made me a much better rider and made me more confident because I know that traction control is going to intervene if I do something stupid, if I start to slide the rear end out too far. It's like the hand of God back there just nudging you back into your line. And so that makes me ride more aggressively there too because I have a little bit of a safety net. I said in my review, it's like a cheat code for a video game and I stand by that. It's like you turn on the assists like in a game like Forza where you can make it so you can't drive off the road by over accelerating and turn all that stuff on. That's what it feels like to ride this bike. It makes me overconfident, it makes me ride more aggressively, and most of the time that's fine, but it's also helping me develop maybe some bad habits. If I get used to riding that aggressively and build maybe not just confidence, but overconfidence, that could be a problem when I get on other motorcycles that don't have these features. If you just want to sit on this bike and ride this bike forever, I guess it doesn't matter how many bad habits you build because you'll always have the bike there bailing you out. Just know the fifth and final thing to know before you buy yourself a Norden 901 is that it will make you ride like an or at least more aggressively, both on and off road. So that's the 5 things I think you should know before you buy a Norden. Obviously, if you want to check out the specs and the features and all that, you can do that on the website. If you want more in-depth kind of analysis and experience and a full review, check out my review video that I posted just recently. I'll link that for you. If you got something out of the video, if you found it entertaining or at least picked up one nugget of information, please consider hitting that like button. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Thank you.
Excellent!